The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Winnipeg Jets share one common trait after exiting these playoffs. They have both in the last 7 years, which is the length of a contract you can sign a player to not on your club. 8 years would be your hometown guy. They both share the fact that they have only won 2 rounds in the NHL playoffs in that period of time. Each one of these teams boasts an impressive core of nearly 4 to 5 players. The Jets with Scheifele, Connor, Hellebuyck, Morrissey, and Ehlers. The Leafs with the big 4, Tavares, Nylander, Marner, Matthews, and to a lesser extent, Riley. Both of these teams were just eliminated in the 2025 playoffs, one in Game 6, one in Game 7. The similarities will continue, though. Notice I said there's only one. There may be only one similarity that matters to fans, but there's a boatload in both of these Canadian organizations. I think it's worth discussing what they have similar and then breaking them down separately as we go through the next 10 minutes of this video. And we talk to 2 fan bases that will always be positive to their teams. They'll always be pumped. Most fans, I believe, are always on the side of their team. But I'm sure there's a lot of lingering questions in what has happened. It's always easy to point to the Leafs and say, at least we're not the Leafs. Well, there are plenty of teams like the Leafs. I happen to use the Jets because we go from west to east, Canada to Canada, but I could easily put the Wild in here as well too. Very similar outcomes in big hockey markets. So if we take a look at their journey from 2019 to 2025, what we see here in this graphic, 2 rounds, first and a first, both missing in the COVID qualifying. That's fine. Asterisks. I don't know what that means. 2021, second round for the Jets, first round for the Leafs. 2022, missed playoffs for the Jets, first round exit for the Leafs. 2023, first round, second round. 2024, first round, and 2025, second round and second round. Now, before we get into the players, I think we have to get the oddities or some of the obvious and maybe not so obvious to people things out of the way. The first is where the playoffs are structured at this point in time. The Central Division and the Atlantic Division have been an absolute bloodbath murderer's row of a conference in the NHL. Taking a look at the Central, Chicago was an absolute powerhouse, dovetailed into the absolutely magnanimous, amazing team that was Nashville that never got over the hump. The Dallas Stars have been kicking around for quite some time. The St. Louis Blues won a Stanley Cup out of it. The Colorado Avalanche, Stanley Cup out of it. Unbelievable, deep teams in the Central for the last 10 years. Maybe more, but that's really when the conferences changed. In the Atlantic, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Oof, we all know what happened there. The Florida Panthers, currently on their unbelievable deep run. The Boston Bruins, always good with the exception of this year. The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Cinderella story Montreal Canadiens that broke through. These divisions have hosted some of the best hockey talent and always have to go through each other. So it is worth noting to me that as you are trying to progress in the playoffs, psychologically and mentally, not just for fans, it is important for an organization to progress and show progression when it matters. And when you have a playoff structure the way you have right now, you end up losing in round 1 and round 2 to eventual Stanley Cup champions in matchups that likely would not have occurred through a reseeding 1 through 8. It may be good for TV, but it is very hard to judge your organization when they're losing to the champs. The Jets lost in the first round to the St. Louis Blues. They won the cup. The Maple Leafs lost to the Panthers. Well, they may win the cup. The Maple Leafs beat the Bolts, lose to the Bolts. They win the cup. Montreal, they go to the cup. And it goes on and on and on. Very similar like that. Whereas the division that hosts Edmonton, Vegas, the Pacific, it has been a significantly easier division to get out of, and that matters because you come out of it healthy and you have different ways that you can approach the finals. You get to build up. Same thing with the Metro. the division Washington got out of. Carolina's been a good team in that division, but that division just doesn't spark the same powerhouse energy that the Atlantic and the Central have. Not in the last 7 years. I don't even think in the last 10, but I can easily go in the last 7. So I think that one needs to be addressed because it is very hard to talk about progression with that in the way. Next, where the teams are similar. They're in pressure cooker markets. Winnipeg may not have the national attention that the Maple Leafs have, but the pressure cooker in Winnipeg is high. There's a huge amount of attention on these players in such a small market. Toronto, always under a microscope, nationally, internationally, and in the Toronto market, arguably the hardest market to play hockey in. Does that matter? Somewhat, but they're professional athletes. But more concerningly, I think with both of these teams, the media isn't always wrong or crazy. Fans and people who predict Stanley Cup champions and favorites aren't always wrong and crazy. It isn't always bias. We think it is, but it isn't. There has not been a time outside of Toronto where people have picked or slotted either of these teams as absolute playoff powerhouses. There are writers that like to talk about Toronto being there, but once you get out of the Leafs bubble, very few people look at them as a serious threat. They're not a playoff team. They don't have that extra gear, and Winnipeg has been subjected to that themselves. Yes, in 2018, they made it to the conference finals. They had one positive outcome, but that team is hardly here anymore. The coach is gone. Most of the players have left. Yes, Scheifele and a few others still remain on this team, but it's a drastically different team. So I don't think we can compare it to what we're comparing in Toronto at this point. Both teams have changed coaches. Both teams have changed depth players. Both teams have changed defensive cores or systems or structures. Yet both teams remain at the same place. Now, there is some positive to this. Both teams progressed this year, and both teams got through the first round and made a very strong push in the second round. Both teams have a future that may or may not be bright. Toronto, we will have to see. Where will Marner and Tavares go? Only time will tell. Could be a blessing, could be a curse, depending on where those guys end up. Winnipeg seems rather locked in for the future. But there's another similarity. Superstars. Superstars when you need them. Connor Hellebuyck in Winnipeg in the last 2 games started to shrug off some, not nearly enough for all, of the doubters in terms of his inability to play in the playoffs, specifically on the road. Kyle Connor was nowhere to be seen. He had a lot of points. He was able to put up points, but he did not pass the eye test for many people watching, myself included. That extra gear, that compete, that desire to get the puck was not there. Nick Ehlers stepped up, Mark Scheifele stepped up, Josh Morrissey stepped up, Dylan Samberg stepped up, lots of Jets stepped up. But you need your critical superstar to step up and get dirty and get nasty, at least in their way, when you need them most. In Toronto, it's the same story. Willie Nylander, in my opinion, stepped up and showed up to play playoff hockey. Auston Matthews did not. Auston Matthews, to me, continues to play the same game in the playoffs that he played in the regular season, and that just isn't enough. Very similar to Kyle Connor. I'm glad you can get it done in the regular season, but I have not yet seen another gear from either of those players in the playoffs. And that brings me to Brad Marchand, the Leaf killer. That is a man that has a different gear in the playoffs. The Florida Panthers have a different gear in the playoffs. The Tampa Bay Lightning have a different gear in the playoffs. You can look at all the talent on those rosters, but nobody can argue that they were not willing to go to the wall and die to win a cup. The playoffs is about inches, and those inches go away in the playoffs. Everybody is willing to take them from you and to fight for them. It doesn't seem like Auston Matthews is. You let me know down below in the comments. I say the same thing about Kyle Connor. When I look at the St. Louis Blues, they are willing to take away everything from you. The Dallas Stars, who continue to be good, they take away everything. Colorado lives in the mode of playoff hockey. McKinnon and Makar could not play the way they play in the playoffs throughout the regular season, but when the playoffs come, they turn it on to another gear, and they already have a high gear. These are the things that differentiate teams, and I've seen players on both the Leafs and the Jets take huge steps up, which tells me they have a chance to progress forward. But both organizations are going to have to answer the very clear question with their big-time player, Connor and Matthews. Is this the future of the team? Will they be able to progress in the playoffs? It is awesome to score 40 to 60 goals all year in the regular season. But the similarity they share as well, too, is I don't know if the players or the fans care anymore. Not about the goals, but about the regular season. Both have accomplished everything you could accomplish now in the regular season. They are both left in a spot at this point in time where everybody, including the players, is going to be waiting for meaningful hockey. And I'm not saying the regular season isn't unmeaningful, but compared to the playoffs, when you've had this sting, it is. You're waiting to get to that point to prove the doubters wrong, because there is nothing you can do in the regular season for either of these teams to prove anybody wrong, because the season is just different. There is more time. There is more space. It is a war of attrition in terms of who's going to stay healthy the longest, play better on the road, and play better in January and February, the dog days of the season, than it is about the playoffs, where it is about taking away inches and playing through excruciating injuries for every moment of time and space. Both organizations will have to answer that question. The likely answer is both organizations will make no change. I would be very surprised if they did, but I would be equally surprised. We won't hear about it in the YouTube or media space, but I wouldn't be equally surprised if they were asking themselves that same very question right now and maybe even entertaining the idea of options. They are just as frustrated. The players are just as frustrated. The players themselves that I am questioning are just as frustrated, and they are fan favorites. And there'll be some people down below saying, no way, don't touch them. There's a billion other reasons, but I'm sorry, when you're the highest paid player on your team or one of them, and you're the best goal scorer on your team, you have a job to do. That's your job. Now you may get points, but you also have to do other aspects of the job, the dirty jobs. And there have been times I would say Auston Matthews does it more so than Kyle Connor. There have been times Connor has done it. Not as much as Matthews, in my opinion. I do question both and if they're willing to go to the wall. Now, to be fair, everybody said this about Alexander Ovechkin. Until he won a cup, then it erased it all. It was over. Doubters were gone. But there's a difference. Watch an interview with Auston Matthews. Watch an interview with Kyle Connor. They do not change. Watch an interview with Alexander Ovechkin. He was passionate. He was empowered. He wanted to win. He was heartbroken. You could tell how much he wore. It's different. Now, the good news, I look at guys like Lowry, Scheifele, Willie Nylander. I look at these players, Matthew Nyes, and these are players that I look at and I can see in interviews, I can see how they talk to their teammates. They love their team. They love their teammates. They want to win. They will go to the wall for each other. There are core pieces on both teams that will play. If you had to ask me who is the better team, it is Winnipeg in terms of being better in the locker room with each other. And it's probably by a mile. That team really likes each other. You can see it in the exit interviews. You can see when Adam Lowry is crying and everybody went to Mark Scheifele in the most heartbreaking moment of any person's life and told him it was okay. You could see hockey was bigger. Hockey was smaller than life at that point for those guys. Those were human beings who cared. And to sit in a penalty box the day your father passes away, after you take the penalty and watch another man with 55 score to end your season, there is nothing worse. I'm happy for Dallas. Dallas is happy for Dallas, but that is not the story people go to the movies for. But that's why it's sports. Cinderella stories are rare, and when they're rare, we do write movies about them. But most of the time, heartbreak does occur, and it's very real. It mimics life, but that's why we love the highs so much. And the high you can take out of it if you're the Jets is that they are a team. They have each other's back. Do the Leafs? I don't know. They're different enough. They have a different enough coach, and they're a different enough squad, but when you have a player in the room, or a couple, and I don't know how many it is. I don't know if it's Tavares and Matthews. I don't know if it's just Matthews. I don't know if it's neither. But when you have guys in the room, certain guys, certain superstars, they set the tone for everybody. You can't bring somebody in and change that. They will be what they will be. They're the cool kids in the locker room. They're the most important piece. They know it. To me, what will spell the outcome of this, if Marner or Tavares stays, or both, very similar to what Scheifele and Hellebuyck did in Winnipeg, everybody thought they were gone. They stayed. If those two guys stay, then we know they have a close team. And we know it isn't as bad as the media makes it out to be. If they both go, it doesn't necessarily prove my point that it's a bad team, but it does lend one more nod to it. Maybe they just got a better deal somewhere else. So one gives us an absolution that it's a good team, and the other one doesn't prove anything. It's all speculation and opinion. This whole video is hypothesis, opinion, and a thought exercise. There are no facts in this opinion other than the fact that both have only won 2 rounds since 2017. So at the end of the day, I think there's a group of fans, players, teammates, and people in the organization that can think both of these teams have made a step forward and have done well. And I think there's a reason for both of these teams to run it back. I also see a reason that if the Leafs lose their 2 players, that they won't run it back. The Jets, however, will. I don't see any wholesale changes coming to Winnipeg. I don't think they should. Talk about it, sure, but I do not think they will at all. I think they will run it back with a similar team, and they will change a few pieces, small pieces, 3rd line, 4th line pieces. Some guys will walk and stay, but overall the core will remain intact and they will want to play again. And I think they have a great chance to improve, but the challenge the Jets face is different than the Leafs because the Jets are going to play an up-and-coming Blues team, a Dallas Stars team that isn't going anywhere, that just got better, an Avalanche team that got significantly better that isn't going anywhere, 2 areas players want to play in, and in a division that is still going to remain a massive powerhouse. The Leafs are going to have to play against Florida, who are in the middle of their own run. And if their own run mimics Tampa Bay's, they still got another year or 2 a runway minimum, maybe more. They're in a little bit of a dire situation, I think. I think they're running out of time, not into time. So there's a big difference for the Leafs. But I need you guys to let me know how you're feeling about both teams. What do you want me to cover next about these 2 teams in June? What do you want to see broken down for them both? Thanks, guys, for being here. We'll catch you on our next one.